at the screen.
Okay, we're live now. So
Okay.
you just look into the camera.
Okay.
Okay. Just real quick, hello and welcome to our weekly newscast of for ULU, Us Lifting Us. We're going to be talking about current events. So I'm going to ask Baba Hekima here. He's in Atlanta. I'm in Dallas. This is Brother Troy. I'm in Dallas. We're going to talk about, basically current events. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask him a series of questions and basically how cooperative economics relate to what's going on right now as far as the current events are concerned. So.
Okay.
Hello and greetings, Baba Hekima. How you doing? How you doing today?
I'm doing well, man.
Very good. Today's Tuesday,
Yeah.
December 27, 2016. Okay. All right. First question here, and the first question, Baba Hekima, is: can a co-op or cooperative economics can it help us form one voting bloc or be more powerful politically?
Well, yes, it can, and that's one of the aims and objectives of our economic empowerment. So that, in other words, so by being economically empowered, you then can have an impact over the politics and the culture of your community. Dr. John Henry Clark, when he was asked, I'm not sure of the question, but he had a simple explanation for economics, politics, and culture. He said that essentially economics is how you address your basic needs, material needs. Politics is how you protect your economics, and culture is how you season the two. So the cooperative economics or group economics or mutually owned enterprises, and of course with the ULU model we're talking about large scale, but depending on where you are in the process, it may look small scale to you. It may look like one or two or three or four businesses in your local community. But to the extent that people come together and pool their resources, not only their pennies, nickels, and dimes, but also their skills, their labor, their energy, their aspirations, their hopes, and build a community, then with economic success, you naturally want to protect your economic interests. And the way you do that is by being in a position to affect policy politically. I had a visitor to my home maybe 4 or 5 days ago. In Georgia, we just created 2 new cities, Stonecrest and the city of South Fulton. Both of these cities, new cities, are more than 90% Black or African.
Really?
Yeah. The city of South Fulton will be nestled right up against the airport, the busiest airport in the world, Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. And there's a plan to build right on top of that airport almost a business complex, almost a new city with hotels, restaurants, entertainment, convention, living, condos, and take advantage of the revenue that's generated by this huge airport where some people never leave the airport. They just come into Atlanta to transport to other planes. But people come in here, and if they could conduct business in the airport or right near the airport, and then get back on the plane and go back home or wherever the next stop is in the world, that would be an advantage. So the brothers and sisters who live in south of Atlanta, south and west of the airport, had the wisdom to put before the state legislature a bill and a move to incorporate this previously unincorporated portion of Fulton County. Fulton County is the county that Atlanta is in. It's also the county in which I'm in. I'm in East Point, Georgia. The airport is in Fulton County. So it's 100,000, roughly 100,000 members or citizens in this new city. And for a while, they're not going to have the economic underpinnings that, in my opinion, that would be necessary for them to exercise as much political power as they want to. But to the extent that in this area, if we're able to build cooperatives and connect families and households and churches and other institutions through group ownership, then you have a situation where people are more closely united and connected because they own business enterprises together. That ownership factor is a great motivator.
Yes.
Sometimes people say, well, I want to support you because you're Black. I want to support you because you're a member of my church. I want to support you because you're a member of my fraternity or my sorority or my lodge, whatever. Those are great motivators. But when you add to that the ownership of a important sector of the economy, then you really are talking about the glue that bring people together. I don't know if you remember, Brother Troy, on one of our Thursday night calls, I talked about the beaver, the rodent, the animal, the beaver. One of the things that was exciting for me, I looked at several YouTube videos on the beaver and his architectural skills. What I knew that the beaver would fall trees and cut off limbs and grab twigs and would bring them to where water was moving swiftly, where he needed to create a dam. In other words, he would not only put logs and sticks and twigs there, but he would force them, intertwine them, lace them. But that wasn't good enough. What he would do is go back to the bottom of the pond or the lake, and he would dig up sediment and weeds and whatever, mud, and then he would pack those in to form the final bonding material. And so to me, ownership is that kind of bonding material, cultural material that really links people together. And of course, with the ULU model, there's no limit to the number of people and businesses and institutions that we can include. So think of a situation where several churches are members of the cooperative enterprise locally, several civic organizations, social organizations. And on top of that, because ULU is not a not-for-profit, if it decides to, it can fund a candidate. It can fund a campaign. With a lot of not-for-profits, you can't do that. You can't affect the outcome of an election, and you cannot affect legislation. That's not a concern about it. If it's in our economic interest and in our social interest, then we weigh in. And at a point, ULU and any successful business enterprise that will build on the scale that we're talking about will have staff in-house, people who will look at the political landscape and who will advise the business managers and the other persons who may be in a position to kind of orchestrate. You know, where you place a business is not just an economic consideration, it's a political consideration. It's a social consideration. So I would say that if we are not building and thinking economics, then the best we can do is maybe coalesce with some other entity in the local community that does have an economic base and ride their coattails, because we're not going to be powerful on our own. So maybe I'll stop there, and maybe you can ask additional questions that bring
That's
us.
fine. Hey, that's great. I tell you what, we may want to come back to that. You were telling me about the business or the cities that were created. I guess these brand new cities that were created will be created in Atlanta, Georgia, or the surrounding area.
Yeah, they're adjacent to Atlanta, but one of them is in DeKalb County, Georgia. The other one is Fulton County, Georgia.
Fulton County.
Both of them south of Atlanta, in a majority black African area. There's a lot of vacant land as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe next week we can do a show entirely dedicated to that, because
I gotta learn some more about it myself. Yeah.
Good. Okay, well, as we learn more, but that sounds, that's like a one in a lifetime kind of thing, whereas it'll be 90% of people that look like us. So that should be very powerful. So I guess we move on to the next question real quick here. So and this kind of coincides with the first question. How will cooperative economics help us take advantage of the current economic climate of today? All right, what's going on right now financially, etc.?
Most of what's happening economically is negative for us. The loss of jobs, gentrification. Let's talk about gentrification. One of the reasons our communities can be gentrified because we don't have any anchors. We're not anchored in the soil, in the community, and so we suffer for that. To the extent that we have specific geographic areas where we have anchor business institutions, where we have created jobs for ourselves, then it's not as easy to overrun us, particularly as you tie that to your first question, where we have some political clout as well. But the economic climate, well, maybe I would say this. Because of the current stress that capitalism is under.
Yes.
And the fact that our young people in particular are under a lot of stress because the jobs that they thought were going to be in place are not there. The entrepreneurial opportunities that they thought would be there are not there.
That's right.
And so what we can demonstrate is that through pooling monies, in particular in a mutual group-owned cooperative model, we can support and fund some of the things that corporate America is not around to fund, and other elements. Now, we don't often talk about it on our calls in ULU, but as ULU grows, ULU, some of its business models will be financial institutions. We'll be in a position to own banks, insurance companies.
Yes.
And so this is another example of when I moved to Atlanta in 1981, there was a black airline headquartered here in Atlanta. It was Atlanta Air was the name of the airline. It was a price competitive airline. But the primary funding source was North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company out of Durham, North Carolina, the largest black-owned insurance company in the world. When we go back to the Black Wall Street era, sometimes we don't think of it, but the single most powerful or richest black institution in the world during that time was North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company.
So the life insurance company was the most powerful organization.
It was, in terms of gross dollar sales, it was the biggest.
Wow.
It was the biggest enterprise.
So how many life insurance companies do we have right now, as far as like?
I don't know, probably less than 50, and most of them small. Even North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company has lost its perch. And you may have heard me on Thursday Night Call when I was a freshman at North Carolina Central in 1962. We would go on an orientation tour, and we went by bus to downtown. And part of our orientation was to go into the headquarters of North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company and go to the top of the building. In 1962, in Durham, North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company was the tallest building in the city.
Wow.
It didn't take long before they changed that. But so in the current climate economically, if our people can see us creating more jobs, paying a fair wage, and with benefits, and in a work environment where we're not treated as second class. In other words, it's a work environment where the workers are the managers and have control. So it's a wholesome environment. I was looking at a video last night, and a person heading up the discussion was saying 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for most of your adult life. That's where you spend most of your time, is in that workplace. And if it's the kind of workplace that where you're treated as a second class, an underland, a slave, so to speak. As a matter of fact, we call it a slave, right? A job, we call it a slave. So, so one of the things that it's important for us to know is that almost everybody on the planet is looking for new ways of conducting business, new models.
Yes, peer to peer.
Yeah, and it's called by many names: democratic, economic democracy, new economies movement, and what we are encouraging African people to do is that if you can involve yourself in cooperative economics in a situation where you can fortify yourself against the ravages of white supremacy and racism and white supremacy, please do. A lot of us just feel like we want to be involved in cooperative economics, and we get involved in multicultural groups. That may be appropriate. And if that's where you are, that's where you are. That's positive. But in many cases, even when you involve yourself there is still a tendency for things to drift in the direction of white privilege in terms of reference points and in terms of attachments to other institutions and other paradigms. In our opinion, it's really informative and empowering and protectionist, if that's the proper word, to also think about our cooperative economic efforts being culturally based on who we are and who we have been as African people in the world. But I want to get back to your question in terms of the economic climate and taking advantage of that. One of the things that it has been unleashed is a flood of knowledge and skills and crafts by brothers and sisters who would have been captured by corporations that are now free agents out here. If ULU can capture those skills, compensate people for them, then you're looking at a technology base, information base, a skill base that you couldn't find previously. One of the examples is Walmart. From a cursory look at Walmart in terms of their beginnings, of course, they basically were a creature of the rural, and they stayed out of the major cities where they would have to go up against Sears and Woolworths and the other retailers at that time. But what they did, they stayed in the rural, they honed their skills, they built their base, and they plucked off talent from all of the other major businesses. They built a backbone, a technology backbone, in terms of managing inventory. And when they got ready to come into the urban environments, they came in blazing, with bazookas, because they have built an infrastructure and they had the talent with them globally to do what it is that they need to do. So ULU is in a position now that there are brothers and sisters out there with some mad skills that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you couldn't touch them because corporate America would have them sewn up. So that's an advantage we don't often think about. Yeah.
Yes. And also too, Baba Hekima, I was thinking, like, if President Bush was a capitalist, right? And we have President Obama, he's a capitalist also. What do you call Donald Trump? Like a ultra capitalist? I mean, because it's not, as far as economically, it's not going to get any better.
Right. Now
it may wake up.
Yeah, Donald Trump.
It may be economic capitalism right now. It's going to ratchet it up right now. So
yeah. But Donald Trump may not be a bad move for us. I don't. If you talk to people in Alabama who are old and they remember the leadership of Alabama under
Wallace.
Under Wallace, a lot of folk felt that they fared better under Wallace. They were
okay. Now, what I'm saying, why is it? That's a good question. Why is it?
There was less confusion about what the intent was, and I think Wallace was probably a person who looked at state and local things as opposed to being an internationalist. Sometimes we have governors over states who, even though they're governors, they are neoliberal, they are internationalists, and they are promoting what is in the interest of global capitalism. Wallace probably, at the end of the day, wanted to do what was good for his state, and that included some Black people. Of course, I'm sure it took him a while to mellow out to some extent, but I've talked to people who felt that they fared better under Wallace's leadership than they had under previous governors and then more recent governors. But Trump is a capitalist, obviously, he's a capitalist. But what he is more than a capitalist, he understands that that racism and white supremacy is the primary partner of predatory capitalism. Right. It is a European construct, even though the Japanese and even the Chinese have joined with them. And of course, Russia, land-wise, is the largest European nation. I think Russia is land-wise the largest nation on the planet. And so these folk realize that that under the feather, in other words, they're the same people. They're Germanic people. And so Trump is in a situation where there may be competition north and south, or Europeans and all the rest of the people in the world and his people are suffering from globalism. He wants to assure his people that that there's some things that can be done to protect their privileged position in the world. And so I think what Trump represents is a realignment or an adjustment in favor of North America and Europe, and maybe even at the expense of China or other Asian partners. Probably not Japan, but yeah, Trump is a globalist, but he's also a racist, and you know, in a weird way, if I were a European, afraid of my position of privilege in the world, knowing that I'm only 5% of the planet.
With the negative birth rate?
Yeah, negative birth rate, and knowing how diabolical I've been in the past. And knowing that, yeah, knowing that if other people get a foothold, and if they could, they would push me off my perch. And so I think Trump is doing what is being demanded of responsible white supremacist, racist leadership in the 21st century. Yeah, I know I've gotten far afield from your question. I don't.
No, that's good. That's good. No, because these answers are pertinent to what we're, the point we're trying to get at. Because it's important that we go over these questions, because people, ever since this quote unquote election or selection, whatever they want to call it,
yeah,
there's been a lot of fear, there's a lot of just, people just don't know what's going on. Yeah. So the more you kind of elaborate, it kind of helps clear everybody's mindset up. So that's good. And one thing I have learned, I hope our people have learned in the past 8 years is neoliberalism is the same thing as neoconservatism. They both have the same effect. So people try and, one thing that I don't like is people try and say it's a difference between conservatism and liberalism. And I think we kind of found out that there's no difference.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty much the same. It's all the same thing. If you haven't figured that part out by now.
They're all monopoly capitalists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And we used
want to. Sorry, go ahead. If you want to elaborate, go ahead.
Yeah, we used to say that the Democrats and the Republicans are just two wings of the capitalist party.
Yes.
And that kind of makes it plain. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't, like I said, as far as a black person living in America, or even just a whole African diaspora, if you don't see that by now, you'll probably never see it. So.
Well, one of the things I want to do, I want to always try and do, if a person of African descent decides that they want to align themselves with Europe, and they feel that that's where their allegiance is, they have every right to do so. And so,
Yeah, and vice versa. But like you said, if you look at the numbers,
yeah,
as far as like people who come from Europe, et cetera, you look at the stats as far as like the percentage of people, you look at the birth rate, not just in the U.S. Russia, all of these, Scandinavia, all these countries, right? You kind of see what's coming down the pipe if you pay attention to those kind of stats, and we do. It's one of the things we kind of study. So I kind of pride myself in looking at the history and seeing how it'll tell us, what's going to happen in the future.
Exactly.
But I have another question. It's probably my last question here, and it's a question I got from a close friend of mine. All right, we've been studying this esoteric information for a while, and she came up with it, and I thought it was a very good question to run by you. And I was wondering, how I bet you this is a good question that most people would ask if they kind of met you in person. So just real quick, is it better that you think it's better to save your money like in a bank account, or like a CD or bond, or invest in a co-op such as Us 50 Nuts?
If I had to choose, I would say invest, but we can do both, because hopefully you're saving your money to invest. I won't answer that.
Okay, no problem.
Uh, and when we do these the next time, I'll find a way.
No problem.
to
No problem.
Yeah,
Live television.
yeah, yeah. Um, Now, in the ULU model, um, you're doing both. Uh, a member of ULU who also um, becomes an investor or uh, takes a equity position in ULU, all but the first $50, which is a processing fee, is still their money. Uh, of course, they're not earning interest off of it, but they can earn a dividend off of it. But at a point, after a specified time, they can take their money. And so they can realize that essentially the benefit that they would derive from it by putting it in a bank. For instance, here in Atlanta, we had the artists who came together with this national campaign of moving our monies from European banks to black banks.
Yes.
And they were very successful, not only in Atlanta, but in New York and other cities.
Yeah, Dallas, Houston also.
Okay, so if we took that same amount of money that went into black banks in Houston and Dallas and Atlanta and DC and New York, if we took that same amount of money and put it into ULU, and then ULU would put it into the banks, the money would still be there for home loans, for small business loans, or whatever the banks would use it for. But because we would also have some control over that, we would invest in businesses that we would own collectively. And the persons who acquired units in ULU and whose monies are in the bank, the same bank that they would save their money in, could also earn dividends or returns from the money that we flipped in terms of businesses that we own together. And so we do have to realize that we have a culture that's dominated by consumption. We got to get away from it.
Yes, dominated.
Yeah, whether we are saving it and don't know what to invest in yet, begin a savings program and then learn some investment options. And but yeah, we've got to pay ourselves first.
Yes, yes.
Get in the habit of doing that. So we say financial literacy is absolutely necessary. Business ownership is absolutely necessary. But the third element is group ownership. And so, but ultimately, let's take the Mondragon model, for instance. Now, they do in excess of $20 billion a year in business. But the owners are in the neighborhood of from 80 to 100,000 members. These are member workers, owners of the enterprise. On a year-to-year basis, they earn a salary with benefits, a nice salary, but they also earn 7% of the profit, their share of the profits is given to them yearly. But 93% of their share of the profit stays in the company to fund new projects. But at a point when it's time for them to retire, they must withdraw all of their holdings. In other words, the other 93% of their share of the profits accumulated over 15 to 20 years or whatever it takes them to get to retirement.
That's good to know.
And so they're retiring as multimillionaires at a fairly young age. And see, because if you think, and I don't know the math, we maybe could quickly do the math, but as a $20 billion enterprise, let's say that their net profits that would be distributed as dividends or returns, let's say it's 1/2 of 1%. So of $20 billion a year, I'm not sure what 1% would be. Anyway, but anyway, you can see on a yearly basis, in addition to their salary, they are banking big time because they had the wisdom to invest in building a global business enterprise that they own collectively. See, when we invest in stocks and bonds and mutual funds, T-bills, whatever we invest in, what the returns that we're looking at is after middle management, upper management, the owners, everybody else has gotten the lion's share of the profits of the enterprise, and then there is a small portion that separated among the stockholders. And so in a mutual company, you regulate how much money your management team is paid, and there is no ownership class apart from all of us. We all own it. So the amount of money and the percentage that's available for distribution back to the worker owners is substantial. And so ultimately, we want to be in a position like, well, it's not exactly like, but let's think about if we Google and we look at the top 100 richest individuals in America, I would dare say that more than 2 or 3 of them would be members of the Walton family. And so, but they earn their monies from a process. And they don't just earn it this year, they earn it continuously. And their children are going to earn it, their grandchildren are going to earn it, their great-grandchildren. And if nothing ends up disrupting the system that they have built, this economic system, then all of their children and grandchildren are fixed for the foreseeable future. So if you have an opportunity to make an investment in a large-scale business enterprise that you can be a stakeholder in, and it also empowers our community and provides a direct benefit to you as well, that's the perfect win-win situation, in my opinion.
Yes, and just to make sure about Hekima, you said when a person from the Mondragon Corporation, when they retire, you said one individual gets, you said millions?
Well, what they do over their working years, let's say this year, their share of the profits are $5,000.
Okay.
So, of course, they got a salary, they got benefits, but their share of the profits, let's say, is $5,000. They don't get it. They only get 7% of that as a bonus. The other 90% stays in the company and grows. But by the time they get to where they're going to retire, all that accumulated capital that's working in the company, they must take their share out. And when they come out, not only do they have a pension plan, but they got cash.
So they get one lump sum plus the pension.
Plus their pension. And see,
wow,
they are not under the Social Security system in Spain because they are worker owners. They're owners. So they have contributions every pay period that goes towards their pension plan or their Social Security plan, their private Social Security plan. But when they retire as a worker, see, in Mondragon, you cannot will your position. In other words, you can't pass it down to your children or your grandchildren.
Oh, okay, you can't. Okay, so they have to earn their spot?
Yeah, I'm glad we went back over it because it's a pure worker cooperative. And when you retire, you're gone. Now, as a community, it's still there. Now, your children can apply for jobs and probably will become a worker because of that process. But you don't accumulate equity that you can will. I guess you can will it, but it won't be in the company. You can't will your seat as a voter, as a worker owner. You can will your proceeds. But in ULU, of course, you can will it assuming that the person you will it to becomes a member and can qualify as a member. But yes, when a worker in the Mondragon Cooperative retire, they're well taken care of. And the same thing is true with the big co-ops in Italy, in some of the co-ops in the UK as well. But the Mondragon model is especially appealing because it's easier to study because they have opened themselves up to acting as a laboratory for the rest of the world.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and the same thing is true with us as we cement our model with hundreds and eventually thousands of businesses that we own collectively. Then in our presentation, our goal, one of our goals, is to capture and redirect a minimum of 1/2 of 1% of the more than $1 trillion a year that flows through our fingers.
1/2 of 1%.
1/2 of 1% of that more than $1 trillion. If we are successful in doing that, then we would be a $5 billion a year enterprise in gross dollars. Not as big as Mondragon, but $5 billion. If we were able to run our businesses, pay our salaries, pay the cost of the raw goods and all the things, and including charity, if we were able to realize a 1% net profit after all expenses, we would be in a position to return $50 million a year to our members in the form of dividends. We don't call them dividends, but so how many members would we have at that point? I'm not sure. But if we had 100,000 members and you divided that into $50 million. That's,
50 million.
That's still a pretty penny for a bonus.
And that's just 1%?
That's 1/2 of 1%.
1/2 of 1%.
No, we're talking about 1/2 of 1% in terms of gross dollar, and then 1% net profit. Now most
net profit.
Net profit.
You're looking at you gotta think about the operating costs, right?
Right. Yeah. After you move all of that, and even if we were talking about 1/2 of 1% net profit, that's still $25 million a year. And if you had 100,000 ULU members who had purchased at least one unit, or let's say you had 100,000 units outstanding, then you would divide that $25 million by whatever number I was using, 25,000. It's still attractive. Now in ULU, of course, every worker is a member, but not every member is a worker. So we, unlike Mondragon, we distribute benefits to all of our members, but the worker receives the greatest benefit. The worker pays 3 times. The worker gets a salary, the worker gets a bonus, and the worker gets profit sharing. So the worker is king.
Annual bonus?
Huh? Yeah.
Annual bonus?
Yeah, annual bonus. And a dividend. Assuming
so it's almost like you get the bonus plus it's almost like having stock or invested in the company because you also get The dividends once every 3 months, or how does that go?
No, it's probably gonna be yearly because it costs a whole lot of money to distribute money. So it's better for us to do it on an annual basis. But again, the worker, an ULU worker must be a member. If when we hire them, they're not a member, they're hired with the contingency that within a short amount of time, they become a member. That's only $50. Also, workers are required to be an owner and acquire at least 1 unit of ownership.
And how much is that 1 unit?
That's $1,000.
Very good.
Now, if they cannot afford to do that, then they sign an agreement that we issue them that unit and pay for it out of their salary, incrementally out of their salary. Because what we don't want is a work environment where some people feel like they have more juice than the other one. But I'm an owner and you're not an owner. So we want within a reasonable amount of time before the orientation period ends that that worker is a member and an owner, even if it's on layaway, if it's on time payment. But yes, so that when they engage with their co-workers, they're on equal footing, because we feel that these business operations will not and cannot be as dynamic and as how would I say, efficient as they could be without the workers being fully engaged and having a stake in the success of that business. In other words, if that business is not successful, they can't get that bonus. And if overall we're not successful, they can't get profit sharing. So they have a motivation, a number of motivations. It's their business, they're part owners. Some of their family members will be part owners, some of their church members will be part owners, some of their sorority members will be church owners, their buddies will be part owners. So they're managing the community's business, their business, and they have a good opportunity to, in addition to a salary and hopefully a benefits package, to have a bonus and profit sharing.
Okay, and so, you know, it's funny that you say that, because right before we started the podcast, and I saw the bank rates for your savings account is 0.03%. So
it's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, it's basically nothing.
It's nothing.
So that's not a true investment at all.
Yeah, yeah. Now, with those kinds of rates, we're not going to try and pay people interest on the money that they put in ULU. And what that little bit of interest just helps to accrue. But we do want to, sometimes people will say, well, what percentage of return should I expect? And I say 100%. What do you mean by that? In other words, if you and I went into business and after all expenses, there was $100 left over, we're going to split that. You're going to get 50 and a 50. However, but let's say when we started the business, it took 10,000 to open the business. You had 9,000 and I had 1,000. So you put more in it than I did. But we agreed that we didn't want you to have 10 times more power than me. So we would be equal partners. Equal partners. But when we divvy up that $10,000 that's left over, then, or we divvy up that $1,000, that clear profit, then you'll get 900, I get 100, because you put in more than me. But I have an opportunity to put in and catch up with you if I choose. So ULU is democratic in the sense that we're equal in terms of say-so and authority, but we're not equal in terms of returns. Well, in a sense we are. Your 10 units, your 9 units will receive the same amount that my 1 unit would receive. It's just that you got 10 and I got 1. So I'm not sure why I went down that road, but
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, the thing that we got to confront ourselves with is that we collect and pool massive resources of money on a weekly basis in our churches and in our businesses and in our associations. And we, for the most part, deposit those funds with European banks, or in some cases with our own banks that are part of the banking cartel that's run by and administered by people who are not attached to our community, except from the perspective of a colonizer. Excuse me. Cut the noise if you would. Yeah, my grandkids are coming in. Yeah.
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 No problem.
So, if we would establish mutual companies that we deposited money with the understanding that those mutual enterprises would invest in our local community, creating jobs, creating additional business opportunities, and from the success contributing to charity, then the churches would even have more money. Everybody would have more revenue because we would have created a mechanism to hold much of what typically goes back into the broader community within our sphere of influence and control.
Yeah. You see, that's a great way of answering the question, because ultimately, if you choose to save your money in a bank, etc., you see what you get from it, basically nothing, or get the same of what you've been getting. If you're happy with that, that's fine too. But once you invest, especially in organizations like Us Lifting Us, right, you get the full circle. You get your own financial institutions. You get a chance to hire people. You get a chance to give people create wealth. So it's like a circle, comes back in a circle.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
that's a good way of answering the question. I'm pretty much going to end on that note.
Okay.
And Baba Hekima, thank you for your time. We're gonna like, today is what, Tuesday. We're gonna decide on a date and time in the future. But it's an excellent talk so far, and I really want to go over that in the future. I want to go over that those new cities that are being created that are mostly black in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So that might be a really good idea for so we can let people know about that, and just from its inception.
Yeah. And
I've never seen a city get created.
One of the candidates for mayor, I could possibly bring him online as well.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Then.
Now, one of the candidates for mayor of that city.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that
okay.
city.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah. All of them. I would assume all of them are going to be black. They may not be. But
I'll tell you, look, see, I grew up in Detroit, right?
Okay.
And right now, currently, I know it's at least 80% black now.
Right.
But the mayor is white.
Yeah.
So we say that, but a lot of black folks have, kind of lost touch with reality.
Yeah. But what you're talking about is a city historically part of the Rust Belt and whatever. But we're talking about a brand new city that black folk maneuvered to bring into existence. So I'm not sure all the things that they're thinking. They're probably looking at ways to get paid, obviously. But
you know the mayor, right? So you know the mayor first, or the guys working for mayor firsthand?
Well, I don't know him that well. Someone brought him by my house.
Okay. So he's actually been to your home.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Okay, very good. Well, that's good enough.
Okay then. All right, brother. Well, you can get back to those girls.
Yeah, Baba Hekima. And the thing is, in the future, right now, this is just an impromptu podcast.
Right.
In the future, I would go into a little more of your background, how you got here, the organization, the RNA you were a part of initially, back in the 60s. and kind of we'll go like maybe 5-10 minutes of that part, and then go on to the weekly newscast.
Okay. Now I'm gonna be
Okay.
able to see this at some point.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, as soon as I get done, it'll upload automatically.
To YouTube.
Yep, to YouTube.
Oh.
Yeah, you'll like it. As a matter of fact,
Can we hide it?
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but this is Brother Troy in Dallas. Go ahead, Baba Hekima.
You don't want to hide it for a minute until you look
No,
at
this
it.
is excellent. I mean, you know, to me, this is we kept it within an hour, right? And I think the more detail we go into, you know, the less questions we have to answer on the podcast, etc. So, like I said, in the future, we have people just type us any questions they want to have during the live broadcast, and we'll read those out.
All right, brother. All right.
The audio there. Okay, very good. Okay, this is Brother Troy and Dallas signing off here. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you. Usliftingus.com.